Hello, dear friends. Welcome to English Habit Zone. If you want to become confident in English, you are in the right place. In this channel, you will learn English through slow, clear explanations and real-life topics. Let's start today's English practice.
Today, we are opening a case file that feels like it was ripped straight out of a modern cinematic thriller. I'm talking high-stakes espionage, psychological warfare, impossible locked room scenarios. But it is actually from the turn of the 20th century.
It really is. We're heading back to Paris around 1910, a time of, gas lamps, top hats, and, as it turns out, some incredibly sophisticated heists.
I love that era, the Belle Epoque. And the story we're getting into today, it really feels like the peak of that golden age of mystery writing, doesn't it?
It absolutely is. And we're looking at a confrontation that is, well, it's arguably one of the most famous in French literature. It's a real battle of wits between two absolute titans of their respective fields.
Titans is exactly the right word. On one side, you have a man of immense, almost incomprehensible wealth. I mean, a billionaire before that word was even really a thing.
And on the other side, a man of, immense cunning, a master of disguise, a phantom, the prince of thieves himself.
We are, of course, talking about Maurice Leblanc's 813. And specifically, we're going to be unpacking the very first chapter, The Tragedy at the Palace Hotel.
And let me tell you, for an opening chapter, this thing does not ease you in. It hits the ground running and doesn't stop.
It really does. And what's so fascinating here, and what I really want to focus on, is that while on the surface this looks like a robbery, a standard heist story,
Right.
it's actually setting up a much larger, much darker conflict. It establishes that the stakes here are not just about money.
Not at all. I mean, sure, there are diamonds involved, a lot of diamonds, but the real currency in this hotel room is information, secrets.
Exactly. It's about a secret plan, hidden documents, and this psychological chess match where the board keeps changing with every single move.
Yeah.
It's about how you break a man, not by stealing his wallet, but by stealing his secrets.
To the core of it. The psychological warfare is the main event.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this specific encounter. We want to see how this one scene serves as a masterclass in observation, in manipulation, and in defining that gentleman thief archetype.
And we want to look at the clues. LeBlanc drops these little breadcrumbs for us, the bent pen, the telephone trick, the hidden compartment, all these little things that drive the mystery forward.
We are absolutely going to be playing detective today. We need to look at the carpet fibers, the cigar ash, the way a man blinks. Because as you said, LeBlanc puts it all right there on the page for us.
He really does.
Okay, so let's introduce the players before we dive into the action, because I think understanding who these two men are is just crucial to understanding why this scene plays out the way it does. First up, the target, Rudolf Kesselbach.
Right, Rudolf Kesselbach. Now, in the world of this book, he's a genuine celebrity. The press has these nicknames for him, like the King of Diamonds or the Lord of the Cape.
Which are just fantastic nicknames. Lord of the Cape sounds like a superhero, but he's actually a financier, right?
A very, very powerful one. The text estimates his fortune at nearly 20 million sterling. Now, if you adjust that for inflation from 1910, we're talking about an astronomical amount of money. Billions in today's terms.
He's on that global stage, one of the wealthiest men alive at this moment.
Without a doubt. But what's interesting is he doesn't really look the part of a ruthless tycoon. The description of him is full of contradictions.
It really is. Leblanc describes him as tall with a ruddy complexion. He's young, but he has these gold-rimmed spectacles, and behind them, his eyes are described as dreamy and pale blue.
There's a gentleness to him, almost a shyness. The book says you might look at him and think he's a poet or maybe an academic, not a man who commands empires of finance.
So you have this shy, dreamy-eyed guy, but then the text immediately pivots. It's such a great bit of writing.
It is. Leblanc writes that this gentleness contrasts curiously with his square forehead and powerfully developed jaws. And that jawline, well, it tells a very different story.
In the literature of that time, a strong jaw was basically shorthand for willpower. For obstinacy, it speaks to ambition.
Exactly. And we learned very quickly that Kesselbach isn't just sitting on his piles of money. He has an agenda, a plan.
He does. And there's this little detail that I think is so important. He's the son of an Augsburg ironmonger.
Right. So he's self-made, or at least he comes from much humbler beginnings compared to the old world aristocracy he moves among. And you could tell he has this chip on his shoulder about it.
He wants something more than just wealth. He wants respect, legitimacy.
Power. There's a key scene early on where he's talking to his secretary, Chapman, and he says he wants power, might, authority. He wants to take precedence over the people who have always looked down on him.
He literally says, I am the son of an ironmonger, but I will be the lord of other realms.
Yeah.
So this is a man who feels he is on the verge of some massive breakthrough, something he calls a colossal plan.
He's driven, ambitious, but as we'll see, he's also deeply anxious. He's a man walking a tightrope. Which brings us to the other player, the intruder.
The man who breaks into this billionaire's fortress. Initially, we only know him as the Colonel.
Or at least, that's how he introduces himself. When he first appears, he's described as a well-dressed individual. Smart-looking, dark hair, dark mustache, and hard eyes.
Hard eyes, that's such a key detail, isn't it? It's a direct contrast to Kesselbach's dreamy ones.
It is. It suggests a complete lack of fear, a steeliness. It's a predator's gaze. But as we, the readers, and eventually Kesselbach find out, this is none other than Arsène Lupin.
The famous gentleman burglar.
The one and only. And if you're all familiar with the archetype of the gentleman thief, Lupin is the gold standard. He's audacious, he's charming, he's incredibly polite.
And he famously claims to loathe bloodshed. He's nonviolent.
Right, but not because he's weak. It's because he sees violence as a failure of imagination. It's crude. It's artless.
He prefers to use his brain. He treats crime like it's an art form.
Precisely. His main weapons are improvisation and psychological manipulation. He turns a robbery into a conversation. That's his superpower. He disarms you with words long before he even thinks about touching your wallet.
So let's set the scene. We are at the Palace Hotel in Paris, a very prestigious, very exclusive address, 4th floor, suite 415.
And the setting here is crucial because it really emphasizes Kesselbach's paranoia. He has tried to build an impenetrable fortress. The suite has 3 rooms. On the right, facing the avenue, you've got the sitting room and the principal bedroom. On the left, facing the Rue du Judelet, is the secretary's room.
And security is tight. I mean, this isn't a place you can just wander into.
Oh, very tight. Kesselbach is not taking any chances. There are really only 2 ways in. The main entrance through the lobby and another door that leads to a suite that's been reserved for Mrs. Kesselbach. But that door is locked and bolted from both sides.
And then there are the keys. He doesn't even trust the hotel's keys.
Not at all. He had a special key made the day they arrived. The only duplicate is held by his valet, a man named Edwards. So, theoretically, no one else on Earth can get in. It is a sealed box.
And yet, as we start section 1, the paranoia in suite 415, Kesselbach is absolutely convinced someone has been getting in.
This is where we see that fantastic contrast between Kesselbach and his secretary, Chapman. Chapman is described as having honest, placid features. He's the voice of logic, the grounding force in the room.
And he's just telling Kesselbach, sir, with all due respect, you're imagining things. It's impossible.
But Kesselbach has evidence, or at least he thinks he does. He's been cataloging these tiny, impossible intrusions.
He points to a traveling bag on the mantelpiece. He says, that bag was shut. It is now open.
Then he mentions a walking stick that was moved the day before and some papers that were touched.
To Chapman, and honestly, to us as the listeners at first, these sound like the ramblings of a very stressed out man. Oh, maybe you didn't shut the bag all the way. I mean, we've all done that.
Exactly. It sounds like you're gaslighting yourself. You're so overworked you can't remember the little things. But then Kesselbach produces what he calls the clinching proof.
The bent black pen.
The bent black pen. It's such a strange, specific detail.
Tell us about the pen. What's the deal with it?
It is, and it's just brilliant writing. Kesselbach finds a single black pen on the table, and it's bent into the shape of a fishhook. To him, this is the one piece of material evidence that can't be explained away. A pen doesn't just bend itself and walk onto the table. It proves an intruder was there.
But Chapman, good old placid Chapman, has an explanation.
He does. He looks at it and he just calmly admits, oh, that's my pen. He says he used it to fasten his tie, took it out and was just twisting it mechanically while Kesselbach was reading. He was fidgeting.
So mystery solved, right? The great intrusion was just the secretary fidgeting with a pin.
Well, this is the brilliance of the scene. Chapman dismisses it, but Kesselbach's reaction reveals his whole mental state. He feels Chapman is laughing at him. He admits he's been acting odd, but he says it's because of this new factor in his life. He says, I'm being spied upon. I'm convinced of it.
It's so interesting because usually in these kinds of stories, the paranoid guy is wrong. But here, Kesselbach's intuition is just screaming at him that something is deeply wrong, even when the supposed evidence, the pin, is completely debunked.
It highlights that Kesselbach is operating on a different level of awareness. because he's working on this tremendous plan, this thing that will make him lord of other realms. He's become hypersensitive. He senses a predator is circling, even if he can't see it yet. He's like an animal in the wild that senses a shift in the wind before the storm hits.
And that predator is much, much closer than he thinks. Let's move to section 2, the trap springs. Because just as Kesselbach is feeling his most vulnerable, he gets this brief moment of relief.
It's the classic calm before the storm. He receives a letter from his wife, Dolores. She's in Monte Carlo, but she's arriving the next day.
And this scene is actually quite touching. It really humanizes him. He smells the perfume on the paper. He recognizes her handwriting.
It grounds him. Leblanc writes that he inhaled its perfume, and it makes him feel strong again, ready to defend himself. It gives him this false sense of security. He thinks, okay, my wife is coming. My plan is moving forward. I'm ready for anything.
He feels the strength of his own life returning to him. And he's also expecting a visitor, the man he calls the Colonel.
Right. And as we know, this is the inquiry agent he hired, a man named Barbaro, but they're using the code name, the Colonel. So when Edwards, the valet, announces that 2 gentlemen are there to see him, Kesselbach naturally assumes it's his hired help.
He even gets a little impatient. He's looking out the window, watching the carriages on the avenue, and he's muttering, what on earth is Chapman doing? The time he wastes in palavering.
He is completely, utterly let his guard down. He is literally looking the other way. And then he turns around, and there's a stranger standing right in the middle of his sitting room.
This is the moment, the intrusion, the absolute violation of the sanctuary he's tried to build. Kesselbach asks, who are you? And the stranger just grins and says, why, the Colonel.
But Kesselbach knows immediately. He says, no, the one I call the Colonel is not you. And the stranger just brushes it off.
Yeah.
He says, the essential thing is that I am myself.
That is such a power move. It doesn't matter who you expected. I'm the one who's here now.
Kesselbach naturally tries to call for help. He yells for Chapman and Edwards.
And the stranger just mocks him. What a funny idea to call out, isn't my company enough for you? It's this playful menace that is so much more terrifying than shouting. He's amused by the whole situation.
Kesselbach doesn't give up. He makes a break for the door.
And he jumps back. Because standing behind the door is another man, Marco, and he's holding a pistol. And on the floor of the lobby, Kesselbach sees his 2 trusty servants, Edwards and Chapman, bound and gagged. So the fortress has fallen. The impossible lock room has been breached.
Completely. The security was an illusion all along. And here is where we see Kesselbach's mettle. He doesn't cower. The text says he's not devoid of physical courage. The danger restores his elasticity. He backs up to the chimney piece and presses the electric bell button.
He thinks he's summoning the hotel staff. He's pushing it again and again, waiting for the alarm to ring, waiting to hear footsteps pounding down the hall.
And the stranger just watches him. Just stands there, maybe leaning against the table. And finally, when Kesselbach stops, the stranger says, do you expect the whole hotel is in commotion? Look behind you. The wire is cut.
Ouch. I mean, that is just demoralizing. Can you imagine the sinking feeling in your stomach at that moment?
It's like he's just checking off the boxes of hopelessness one by one. But Kesselbach still isn't done. He makes one last desperate move. He grabs his traveling bag, pulls out a revolver, and pulls the trigger. 1, 2, 3 times.
Click, click.
Nothing happens. Silence.
The gun doesn't fire?
And the stranger says, so you load your weapons with air and silence.
Air and silence. That is such a great line. It sounds so poetic for a burglary.
It's poetic and it's terrifying. Because it shows that the stranger didn't just break in. He prepared. He was in this room before. He neutralized every single defense Kesselbach had. The bell, the staff, the gun. He's in total control. He has been in control for hours, maybe even days, and Kesselbach is just now realizing the game was over before it even started.
And then to cap it all off, the stranger grabs a chair, spins it around, sits a straddle on it, and lights a cigar. An Upton, light color.
Yeah.
Very specific.
He completely normalizes the situation. He asks for a chat. By sitting down and smoking a cigar, he's telling Kesselbach, I'm not in a rush. I'm not afraid of you. This is my room now. It disarms Kesselbach psychologically more than the broken gun ever could. It transforms the scene from a violent break-in to a business meeting, a very, very one-sided business meeting.
So now we enter section 3, the interrogation. The stranger is comfortable. Kesselbach is cornered. What does he want?
He's very specific. He lists 2 items. First, a black Morocco pocket case shaped like an envelope. And second, a small ebony box inlaid with ivory.
Kesselbach tries to play it cool. He just says, burnt. Both of them. Gone.
It's a bold lie, a desperate one. But the stranger isn't buying it for a second. And this is where the stranger reveals just how much homework he's done. He starts recounting Kesselbach's movements from the day before.
He knows Kesselbach went to the Credit Lyonnais Bank on the Boulevard des Italiens.
Not just that he went to the bank. He knows Kesselbach had a parcel under his overcoat when he went in and didn't have it when he came out. And then he drops the bombshell. He knows the exact safe number.
Safe number 16 in recess number 9.
That is a terrifying level of accuracy. It implies he has eyes everywhere. It means Kesselbach has no privacy, no secrets. His entire life has been observed.
The knowledge strips away any hope Kesselbach had of lying his way out of this. He realizes he can't deny where the items are. They in the bank.
So the stranger demands the key and the cipher, the password needed to open the safe.
And Kesselbach refuses. And this is where things get physical for the first time. The stranger snaps his fingers, and Marco, the henchman, ties Kesselbach up. The book calls it the quadruple knot. Basically, Kesselbach is trussed up like a mummy.
They search him, and of course they find the key to save 16 in recess 9, but they still need the password. A key is useless without the cipher. And Kesselbach, to his credit, is stubborn. He just says no.
So the stranger initiates a countdown. He tells Marco to put the revolver against Kesselbach's temple. In 10 seconds, he says, blow out the gentleman's brains.
That escalated quickly. For a guy who supposedly loathes bloodshed, this is a pretty intense threat.
It is, but notice the method. He doesn't beat Kesselbach. He doesn't torture him physically. He uses the threat of imminent, unavoidable death. He uses time as a weapon. He counts. 1, 2, 3.
And Kesselbach breaks at 6.
He's a billionaire, but he's mortal. He's looking at that gun barrel and realizing that all his millions won't stop a bullet. He gives up the word Dolor.
Dolor, which of course is short for Dolores, his wife.
The one person who gave him comfort just moments before.
Exactly. Even his secret password is tied to his one emotional vulnerability. And the stranger, let's just call him Lupin, even though he hasn't admitted it yet, Lupin mocks him a little. Mrs. Kesselbach's name is Dolores, I believe, you dear boy.
It's so patronizing, but it also shows Lupin knows the personal details too. He knows the wife's name. So he sends Marco off. Marco is supposed to meet an accomplice, Jerome, give him the key and the password, and Jerome will be the one to actually rob the bank.
Marco starts to leave. Lupin stays behind with the bound Kesselbach, and he says, I've never been in less danger than at this moment.
He's feeling pretty good about himself. He has completely won. But then Section 4, the comedy of errors, or what could have been a tragedy for Lupin. The doorbell rings.
Ding dong. And it's not just any visitor. Kesselbach, with a bit of a gleam in his eye, admits that he was expecting someone. The police.
He had called the prefecture earlier. He'd called for Detective Sergeant Gourel.
This is a massive wrench in the works. The police are literally at the door. Kesselbach is tied up. Lupin is an intruder. Most criminals would panic. They'd run or maybe shoot their way out.
But Lupin, he just gets annoyed. He looks at Kesselbach and calls him an old fox.
He's almost impressed. It's like, you sly dog, essentially. But he doesn't panic. He improvises. And this is that audacity we talked about. First, he quickly drags the bound bodies of Edwards and Chapman into the bedroom so they can't be seen from the door.
He's cleaning up the crime scene while the cops are pressing the buzzer. The nerve is unbelievable.
It's off the charts. Then he realizes Marco hasn't actually left the suite yet. He catches Marco just as he's about to leave. He tells him, Marco, gag him, quick, referring to Kesselbach. Then he tells Marco to hide in the sitting room.
And here comes the craziest, most audacious bluff in the entire story. Lupin tells Marco to speak, but not as Marco. He orders him, speak as if you were Kesselbach.
He's going to make his henchman impersonate the man they just tied up and gagged.
That's the plan. Lupin himself goes to the door to open it for Detective Gourel. He's going to play the intermediary. He opens the door and sees Gourel, who's described as this giant, jovial detective. Lupin immediately puts a finger to his lips.
What? Pretending to be a secretary? An assistant?
He acts like a trusted friend or aide. He opens the door just a crack and whispers, shh, he's working over head and ears in work.
End quote. And then from the other room, Marco calls out.
In a voice that sounds like Kesselbach's, he says, you must apologize for me, my dear fellow. Tell Monsieur Gourel I'm awfully sorry. I will see him tomorrow morning at 9.
And Gourel buys it.
He buys it. You have to think about it from Gourel's perspective. He probably doesn't know Kesselbach's voice perfectly and the distance muffles it. And more importantly, Lupin is so confident and polite at the door, he acts like a helpful friend who is just shielding a very busy, very important man.
It's the sheer audacity. We call it cheek or nerve. Lupin essentially uses the arrival of the police, the single greatest threat to his plan, to demonstrate his total control over the situation. He sends the police away.
It's the ultimate humiliation for Kesselbach. He's right there, gagged, hearing his own identity being used to dismiss the very help he summoned. He's screaming internally, but outwardly, Mr. Kesselbach is just politely rescheduling the meeting for 9 a.m.
It creates this surreal, nightmarish moment where the victim is literally erased from his own story. Marco becomes Kesselbach, and the real Kesselbach is just a prop in the corner of the room.
So Gurel leaves. Mako finally leaves to go rob the bank, and we are left with Lupin and Kesselbach. This brings us to Section 5, the reveal.
Lupin is human, though. The book notes that after Gurel leaves, he drinks a full tumbler of water and wipes his forehead. He admits to himself, that was jolly clever. He was stressed. He felt the heat at that moment.
And then he properly introduces himself. He takes out a card and hands it to Kesselbach. It says, Arsène Lupin, gentleman burglar.
And the reaction from Kesselbach is so telling. He's relieved.
Why? Why on earth would he be relieved? He's just been robbed and humiliated.
Because Lupin has a brand. Kesselbach knows the reputation. He knows Lupin doesn't kill. If this was just some random, violent thug, Kesselbach might already be dead. But with Lupin, he knows it's just business. He knows he's going to survive this. It shifts the entire encounter from a life-or-death situation to, a very unfortunate financial transaction.
A mere peccadillo, Lupin calls it. The simple annexation of other people's property. He makes it sound so trivial.
Lupin actually compliments Kesselbach on not firing the gun. Or rather, he says, Arsène Lupin is a delicate, squeamish burglar. He loathes bloodshed. He frames it as if he did Kesselbach a favor by disabling the gun, saving Kesselbach from the trauma of committing violence. It's an incredible bit of psychological jujitsu.
So now that they're on a first-name basis, essentially, Lupin starts explaining how he got involved. And it turns out this wasn't a random robbery at all.
Not in the slightest. Lupin reveals that he has a friend who is a clerk at the inquiry agency, the one run by the real Barbaro, the man Kesselbach knew as the Colonel. Lupin saw Kesselbach's request come in.
And the request wasn't about security. It was to find a specific man, Pierre Leduc.
And this is where the mystery really deepens. Who is Pierre Leduc? The description Lupin reads out is incredibly specific. He's hiding somewhere in the slums of Paris. Height, 5 feet 9 inches. Fair hair, mustache.
And then the distinguishing marks.
These are the crucial details. The tip of the little finger on his left hand is missing. It's been cut off. And there's an almost imperceptible scar on his right cheek.
Lupin asks the million-dollar question, or in this case, the 20 million sterling question. Why does the billionaire king of diamonds care about this random guy from the slums? What does Pierre Leduc represent?
And Kesselbach just clams up. I don't know.
Lupin immediately calls his bluff. You lie, Mr. Kesselbach. You consulted papers in that Morocco case about him.
This is the real crux of the conflict. Lupin wants the money, sure, but he's a connoisseur of secrets. He's obsessed with the puzzle. He senses that Pierre Leduc is the key to something much, much bigger than a simple robbery. And Kesselbach's refusal to speak only confirms it. If it was nothing, he'd just explain it away. The silence proves its value.
So we wait. Lupin smokes his cigar. Kesselbach is tied to the chair. And finally, the telephone rings. It's Marco calling from the bank.
The heist is complete. Marco got into the safe.
And what did he find?
The safe contained the ebony box. And this is a huge, but there was no Morocco case. The papers are missing.
So the main document is gone, but they have the box, and inside the box,
200 fine diamonds.
Jackpot, game over.
You would absolutely think so. Lupin should be thrilled. He has a literal fortune in his hands. But he's not just listening to Marco. He's watching Kesselbach's face as he takes the call.
This is the aha moment. Section 6.
Lupin says into the phone, "Are they fine diamonds?" Capital. And he notices that Kesselbach isn't really reacting to the loss of the diamonds.
Right. For a man worth 20 million sterling, 200 diamonds is a bad day at the office. But it's not a catastrophe. It's an insured loss.
Exactly. But then Lupin, being the master manipulator he is, offers a trade. He says, "I'll keep the diamonds, but you can have the box back."
And Kesselbach panics. He says, no, the box too. I want everything.
That hesitation, that sudden desperation for the empty box itself. In that instant, Lupin realizes the box is worth more than the diamonds that were inside it. The secret isn't in the missing papers. It's somehow in the box. Kesselbach just gave himself away.
He fell right into the trap. By trying to save the box, he revealed its true value.
So Lupin starts interrogating Marco over the phone about the physical construction of the box. Is the bottom thick? Is there a false bottom? He's dissecting the object remotely, using Marco as his eyes and hands.
And Malco says, no, it's just a normal Japanese box from the Faubourg Saint-Antoine. Nothing special.
But Lupin is still watching Kesselbach's face. He's listing off parts of the box. The sides, the bottom, and then he mentions the lid. And Kesselbach blinks, or squints. A tiny, involuntary movement.
The tell.
The poker tell. It's all Lupin needs. He practically shouts into the phone, "The lid! That's it, Mako!" Kesselbach blinked. He gawked as if there must be a looking glass, a mirror inside the lid.
And he tells Marco to break the mirror.
Break it! Kesselbach is agonizing in the chair. He knows he's been read like a book. Lupin knows he's hit the real jackpot now.
And behind the glass?
A letter. A folded piece of paper. A copy of the very document from the missing Morocco case.
So the papers were there all along, just hidden.
Hidden in plain sight. In the one place Kesselbach thought was safe because its value was disguised. Lupin has Marco read the beginning of the letter to him over the phone.
And what does it say?
It's cryptic. Just the beginning. Quote, "Copy of the letter contained in the black Morocco case." But that's enough. Lupin's ecstatic. He cries out, "Victory! All the diamonds in the cape and old man Kesselbach's secret into the bargain."
He has everything. He has stripped Kesselbach of his wealth, his security, his defenses, and now his deepest, most valuable secret.
It's a total systematic dismantling of the man.
And that brings us to the end of this incredible opening chapter. But there is one final line in the source text that just haunts me. It brings everything full circle.
I know the one you mean.
The communicating doors are always bolted on both sides.
It yanks us right back to the beginning, to the impossible nature of the crime. We've just spent all this time watching Lupin dismantle Kesselbach after he got into the room. But the text reminds us, we still don't actually know how he got in.
It's the ultimate locked room mystery. The doors were bolted, the window was too high, the valet had the only other key, and he was tied up with everyone else.
Lupin isn't just a thief, he's a magician. But even magic has a method, and Leblanc leaves us desperate to know what it is. It leaves the listener, and Kesselbach, with this feeling of awe. He didn't just break in, he passed through walls, metaphorically speaking. It cements his status not just as a thief, but as a phantom.
So let's summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive, because there's a lot to unpack in the Lupin method.
If we break it down, I think it comes down to three things. First, you have preparation. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. He knew the bank details, the safe number, the layout of the suite. He neutralized the gun beforehand. He had a team in place. He had already won the battle before the first shot was fired, or, well, before the first shot failed to fire.
And the second part has to be observation.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
The bent pin wasn't evidence for him, but Kesselbach's reaction to it told him about the man's state of mind. And then at the end, the blink. That tiny blink revealed the hiding spot in the box. He reads people better than they read themselves. He uses their own biology against them.
And third, and maybe most importantly, is the audacity.
The sheer nerve. The bluff with Officer Goel is the prime example. He takes his biggest liability, the arrival of the police, and turns it into a tool to assert his dominance. He takes risks that no rational person would ever take, and that's precisely why he wins.
And then on the flip side of that, we have the Kesselbach enigma.
Right. We're left with this picture of a man who has everything the world says you should want. Money, status, power. But he is desperate for this one man, this Pierre Leduc.
It's a fascinating contrast. You have the ironmonger's son who became a billionaire, and he's obsessed with finding a man from the slums with a missing finger. It's a paradox.
It suggests that the true power, the authority that Kesselbach really craves, doesn't come from bank accounts. It comes from something else. Information, lineage, perhaps, or maybe a secret that can topple kings. Pierre Leduc is the key to that power.
And Kesselbach just lost that key to a man who just wanted to have a friendly chat and smoke a good cigar.
A man who plays the game for the sheer joy of it, for the art.
So here is my final provocative thought for you, the listener. We've seen the billionaire and the burglar go head-to-head, but ask yourself this. Why does a man like Kesselbach, who has 200 fine diamonds sitting in a box, care more about a single piece of paper regarding a scarred man from the slums? What does Pierre Leduc represent that is worth more than a literal fortune in diamonds?
And that is the question that drives the rest of the book. Is it about blackmail? Is it about a lost heir? Is it a political weapon?
Whatever it is, it's now in the hands of Arsène Lupin, and that makes it the most dangerous piece of paper in all of Paris.
Absolutely.
That's all for this deep dive into 813. Thanks for listening. And keep your eyes on your own ebony boxes. You never know who's watching you blink.
See you next time.